All right, we are back for another edition of what's it called?
The Wild and Exotic Adventures of a Wasp.
All right, so it's this snowy day over Christmas holidays here, but I believe we have a few work stories.
Yes,
that
we
we're
do.
going to tell. What's the first one?
Well, this involves a friend of mine, worked in the same office, who was an avid investor in the stock market. Now, he had done this for a while, he claimed he knew what he was doing, claimed he was making money. So he came in one day and he said, I got this hot new tip. The name of the company is Silver Creek Precision. And they are a supplier to Xerox, who was then flying high and making copying machines. And they said they're making a part that is essential to the Xerox copier. So they're going to go no place without. So he would get on the phone the next day and they called Silver Creek Precision. They'd say the stock was like a 2. The next day it was 2.25, 2.5, 3.25, 3.5. Kept going up and up and up. This went on for several weeks. And then one day he calls and he finds out the stock was at like 15 or 16. It had dropped. He didn't know what was going on, so the next day he called it, dropped again. Finally got all upset. And he calls the company. And he says, Silver Creek Precision? She said, wait a minute, I screwed that up. He calls, the receptionist says, Silver Creek Precision. And he said, I would like to speak to the manager of investment relations, please. She said, speaking. There are only 2 people at the company, the president and the girl who answered the telephone. All right, the second one involves long time ago in my career, because my background was in industrial labor relations. A friend of mine who I'd known from college called me and said that New York State had recently passed the Taylor Act, which gave the right to bargain and form unions by public employees. And he said a lot of the teachers are forming unions, but the school boards don't quite know how to handle this. So we're looking for people who are willing to work and negotiate contracts representing the school boards. So I said, geez, I don't know much about that. I've had some background in labor relations. And he said, look, don't worry about it. He said, I know you got that great camel hair coat. Wear the camel hair coat, a good tweed jacket, and smoke your pipe. You'll bowl them over. So the first place I had to go was to Lyons to be interviewed by the principal to see whether or not they were going to hire me. So I went down there in my camel hair coat with my pipe and went into his office. I parked my car right outside his office. Had a big window so you could see my car. And went in, we talked. I impressed him with all my background, and we talked for maybe half an hour, 45 minutes. I'm really flying high. He says, well, this has been good. He said, we'll let you know. So I said, okay, and I go out, and I walk out his window. I wave at him. I go to get in the car, lost my keys. So I'm panicking, going through all my pockets. I didn't want to appear to be too much of a doofus. So finally I turned around and I walked downtown. And I went to a gas station. And he said, well, there's a guy down on the canal, works down the marina. He could probably get your car open. So lo and behold, I had to walk back with this guy, and he used this thing alongside my window. Everybody in the school at that point was looking out the window at me. Mm-hmm. He got the car open, never my keys inside the car. I did get the job, but I thought, God, they're going to think I'm such a doofus. They'd never.
But you never wanted to go. You didn't think maybe you left them inside there?
No, actually, I could see them in the car. I didn't actually do it. I knew they were inside the car.
Okay, so
you know. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's good. What's next? Number 3.
Number 3. My first job out of college, worked for Stromberg Carlson. And I worked with a guy named Ed Dudley. Great guy. Great manager. Good guy. But he did make one major faux pas. I'm not sure it was the first summer I worked there, but maybe the next summer or two. Some of the women, we employed a lot of women in that plant, they were coming to work in kind of scanty attire, short shorts. And that bothered him. So he posted on all the bulletin boards in the company, all women who come in to work in short shorts will be asked to remove them. which obviously got
That's
too
good.
much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
Well, this other one involved when I worked out in Newark for C.H. Stewart, C.H. Stewart. There was a racquetball court that got built right next to the company. So we had about 5 or 6 people, and every day you'd get a phone call about 11 o'clock saying, "Are we going to play today?" So sometimes it'd be 2 people, sometimes 4 people. But we went down there like 3 or 4 days a week. Good fun. Well, I went down there. We were too experienced, and when there were 4 people on a racquetball court, it gets a little bit dicey. So a friend of mine, who was my partner. So we started to play, and about halfway through the session, he comes across a backhand and hits me right in the bridge of my nose. So I bled a little bit, got cleaned up, went back to work. I'm sitting there in my office, and I went crunch, crunch, crunch. And the guy who worked for us said, "Well, obviously your nose is broken." So we go over to the Newark Hospital. And the doctor's name, I think, was Bumsuck Lee, something like that. So he looks at it, he says, "Yeah, it's broken." And he said, "I'm going to have to put a cast on it." I said, "A cast? I never heard of a cast on a broken nose." "Oh, yeah, we put a cast on." So I got a big piece of gauze and soaked in plaster, put it over my nose and taped me from my forehead to my chin, my forehead to chin. I could just barely see out of this thing. So I go back to work, and he says, "You have to keep it on for 2 weeks. Don't take it off." So I go back to work. Everybody's laughing at me, making fun of me. And I had to go that Thursday, I think, up to Toronto to give a speech to a sales group. So on the way up there, I had some ice bags. And I used those to reduce the swelling. Kept the cast on. But when I got there, I took the cast off. And did my meetings, did all that stuff. And I laid the cast alongside the bed on a nightstand. Well, Pat came up to spend the weekend with me. So about the second night, I took the cast off, laid it on the nightstand. We went out someplace, came back, it was gone. Apparently the cleaning people had taken it and it was gone. So I never did use it again. So I went back to see the guy in 2 weeks. He said, "Have you had it on all the time?" I said, "Yeah, for sure." He said, "Well, it healed up pretty good." So that's the only time I've ever heard of anybody having a cast on a broken nose. And I was the guy.
Well, it worked.
Yep, it worked.
Yeah.
This is another quickie story. Back in the day, when you got promoted at a job, the company PR people would send a notice into the newspaper. And it would say, "Don Anderson gets promoted to whatever it was." So that happened to me. A couple days later, my parents came out, were visiting us. And I get a letter from Frank Horton, who was then the congressman representing Rochester. I said, "Dear Don, congratulations on your promotion. Looking forward to working with you in the future. Good luck and best wishes." My parents were overwhelmed by this. The congressman would write me a letter. Now, that was published in the Times-Union. The other paper was Democrat and Chronicle. About 2 days later, it gets published in Democrat and Chronicle. I get another letter, identical letter from more.
But did your parents know about that one too?
Yeah, they were still there.
Okay.
So all of a sudden, my letter wasn't quite as...
I thought maybe you would have gotten away with it had they left.
No, they didn't left. They didn't leave.
All right. Well,
So that's some of my work stories.
That's pretty good. We'll be back shortly, I guess, with another edition of
The Wild and Exotic Adventures of a Wasp.